Inspired, you know, you're going to see that everywhere we go with the inspired by safety, innovated for your lifestyle. You know, that is our brand, and that is our brand message. And, you know, we think with all of our safety certifications and all of the innovation that we have out there, that fits really well with everything that we do. Today we're going to focus on the top 10 questions that we typically see. You know, the one thing that we pride ourselves on here is our customer service through the customer service team as well as the tech service team. We want you to be able to talk to a live body. We want the resources in place that you're going to talk to somebody and get an answer as soon as possible. And we really do pride ourselves on that. And Chuck, I'm sure, will agree with me on that part as well. There we go. You know, we believe that customer service is not just a department, but it really is our entire company. You know, the customer is what we're focused on. You guys, as our dealers, are our customers. You know, obviously you have your customers, but you are our customers, and we want to make sure that we're servicing you properly so you can service your customer properly. You know, we've implemented 2-second lean to make us more efficient out in the shop, in the office, wherever the case may be. You know, those little 2-second lean events add up to some time savings, some, you know, cost savings, you know, just all types of savings that we can, you know, hopefully make us more efficient and service you quicker. We implemented the Quick Ship program within the past year. The NFI certification, our tech team is NFI certified. Our engineering team is going through the process of getting NFI certified, and, you know, I have it on one of my personal goals, you know, before the end of the year to get NFI certified as well, too. So, you know, we're getting ready to extend our hours again to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you know, Monday through Thursday, and then 8 to 5 on Friday. But, you know, we understand that, you know, when the East Coast stops at 5 o'clock, there, you know, our friends in Mountain Time and Pacific Time, you guys are still working. So we want to make sure that we can support you guys as much as possible. And then R&D, you know, that's the backbone of it all. You know, Greg Steck, you know, with his EE Mind, you know, the Bluetooth technology and the CSA products that we're putting out there, we're going to continue to evolve our core technology as well as work on some ancillary products. We want to listen to you guys, our dealers, on what we should be putting out there and how we should change things. So the feedback that we do through the tech talks or anything else, please send that to us, because that's what's going to make us continue to grow as a company and get better, and that's through your feedback. You know, with that, you know, you don't have to listen to me ramble anymore. I'm going to turn this over to Chuck Parsons. He's a technical service supervisor, and he's going to go through the top 10 questions that they typically get throughout a season.
How you guys doing today? I'm Chuck, so I guess now I'm going to bore you to death here now. Starting off here, of course, we do talk to a lot of people that, mostly consumers, of course, that, you know, obviously want to take good care of their equipment. There are some things you can do, of course, for some spring and some fall maintenance. On the electronic ignition, of course, in the spring, I would recommend, obviously, the very first thing you do is perform a good visual inspection, all right? Make sure you don't have a bunch of debris in the fire pit within your media. If you have to, remove all the media. Get all of that debris out of there.
A whole lot different from the old stove.
While that media is out of there, by all means, look for cracks in the burner. That's when you're going to find them, of course, obviously with the media removed. Remove the hood off of the pilot assembly. You're going to want to do a good visual inspection on that as well. Just make sure your igniter is in good shape. Obviously, the thermocouple. If you've got a whole bunch of soot and carbon built up on that thermocouple, by all means, take a soft brush and get that cleaned up. I would, there's really no need to inspect the thermocouple underneath. Chances are, if there's a crack or a bend or a kink or something like that, it was done on installation anyway. So the other thing as well, outside of the enclosure, just ensure your ventilation openings haven't been clogged up with leaves, debris, things like that. Okay. Once you've done your visual inspection, of course, you can get your media put back in there. If you have turned the circuit breaker off, let's say in the fall, get the circuit breaker turned on. You can leave the gas line off at this point, but go ahead and apply power and just make sure we can get at least the igniter to glow, okay? Of course, when I say apply power, whether that's the switch, the timer, if you're using the Bluetooth, then by all means the remote or the app. Even with no gas to this thing, you should at least get igniter to glow, okay? If your igniter is glowing real well, go ahead and shut everything down, open up your gas line, and again, apply power and get her going, okay? If you do in fact have, let's say, glass, maybe even some rolled lava stone, while that media is out of there, that would be a really good time to obviously wash that media if you got any soot or anything on that. Just use some really mild soapy water on it. Just let it soak. A soft brush, you can brush it off as well. Beyond that, as far as the spring goes, if you've got deeper issues than that, no igniter, things like that, of course, I encourage you to give me a call. So, the spring maintenance on the FPPKs, a little bit easier. Of course, the FPPK would be our push-button flame sensing. You guys should be familiar with those. Again, you're going to remove all the media out of there. Perform a good visual inspection of the burner. Pilot assembly again. Make sure there's no cracks. The pilot assembly is in good shape. Again, you can clean the thermocouple at that point. Of course, I would absolutely, regardless of what kind of spark you're getting, I would certainly replace the battery at that point as well, okay, for your push-button igniter there, okay? Of course, again, the ventilation again, that's very critical. We got to make sure that obviously, you know, it hasn't been clogged with debris. Sometimes you'll get critters climb in there, and of course they'll build nests. Sometimes they'll chew on wires, things like that. So that's always something to look out for. Of course, turn the gas line on at that point and go ahead and fire the unit off. But please keep in mind on the FPPKs, once you shut that gas line off and you reopen the gas line and go to light it up, just be patient. It may take quite a while to get that gas bled up through the pilot assembly itself. So just be patient with it. It will go. If you want to, you can easily put a lighter down there as well. That'll help with the pilot ignition anyway. But again, you're not going to get good pilot, of course, until that gas line's been bled through there. So the matchlets, that's basically our simplest unit there. You're going to remove the media again. Look at the burner. Look for cracks. Get the debris, the sticks, the leaves, stuff out of the media. Again, the ventilation openings, it's very, very critical, especially on an LP application, of course. And of course, go ahead and turn the gas line on, open your key valve, and get the burner lit. So very, very simple with the matchlets, not a lot to do. We get gas line sizing questions a lot here at HPC as well, you know. And I'm sure all of you know we don't actually size gas lines. I'm not on site. I don't know what's going on out there. What we can do is, of course, give you some very valuable information on what you will need to size that gas line, okay? But for the most part, it's pretty popular, the longest run method, okay? So first of all, you're going to verify your gas type and your gas pressure, your gas system pressure, okay? Of course, LP operates a little bit higher pressure than natural gas will. They also have different specific gravities, okay? And that will come into play when you're talking about, let's say, the cubic foot per hour, things like that. So the next step, of course, is you're going to add up all of the BTUs required for that gas line. And it doesn't matter how many appliances are on that gas line, you need to know the input of every appliance on that gas line, okay? Of course, you're going to start with the BTU inputs of them all, okay? You're going to measure the gas line in feet to, obviously, from the meter or from your gas source to the actual appliance itself, the longest appliance on that gas line, okay? Of course, natural gas versus LP, you are going to get different gas line sizing, and of course, we can point that out in the chart, of course. And again, choose a proper gas line sizing chart based on the type of gas pipe you're actually using, whether you're using basically some black iron smooth wall pipe, the CSST, the plastic PEX type gas line is starting to become pretty popular as well. So. Again, the calculation, moving on, it's once you get your distance on the gas line, you know your total BTU on all the appliances, okay? So you're going to add all of those BTU evaluations up, and you're going to convert that to cubic feet per hour, okay? So on natural gas, 1,000 BTU is going to equal 100 cubic feet of gas, okay? So again, if you're ending up with, let's say, 250,000 BTU across all of the appliances, then you're looking at 250 cubic feet per hour, okay? At that point, you know, obviously, your cubic foot per hour that you need to deliver. You know the length of your piping. Then you'll go to the gas chart that you're using, and that's going to be based on the actual type of piping that you're using there, okay? On the example up here at the top right, of course, we're just using a Schedule 40 smooth wall pipe. You will obviously come across to your distance on your gas line, okay? And then come down and find the closest. You'll want to go over, obviously, to the cubic feet per hour that you're looking for, okay? That's going to dictate exactly what size gas line you need to run, okay? If you've got multiple appliances on that gas line, you just size the longest run. So then you're going to come back to the second longest, and you're going to do the same calculation for that particular appliance as well. So, media requirements. This is something we talk about quite a bit because, again, a lot of consumers, they're usually looking for upgrades at this point, you know. But again, we still see a lot of guys just dumping way too much media on top of the burners, and of course that can cause some problems, okay? HPC, of course, expects our burners to be covered. We do not expect you to see the burner, all right? Big difference, of course, with the brass burners, where you say, obviously may see some of those jets exposed, things like that, so. The blowout box on our certified units that use a pilot, a safety pilot on them, we can't just bury those either, all right? You can apply lava rock glass up against the blowout box. That's not a problem. You can even bring them up to the lid. But the minimum would be leaving the perforations on the lid exposed, okay? What we're trying to do there, of course, is just make sure we get plenty of air to that pilot to keep that really strong pilot that we use outdoors. So, lava rock sometimes becomes an issue brand new, okay? Right out of the bag, it can be rather damp and wet. problem with that is when you apply that lava rock and, of course, you fire your unit up, you tend to get a little bit smaller flame, and it's blue at the base of the flame, okay? That is from the moisture in the rock. That'll give you some blue flame at the base of the flame itself. Trust me, just give it, half hour, 45 minutes, let it burn. That blue will start to go away as we burn all that moisture out of that rock, okay? We tend to call it here at HPC kind of seasoned lava rock. Now, with that said, it doesn't necessarily mean that, if your fire pit gets rained on, you're going to end up with a blue flame again. That's a little bit rare. Of course, if it's soaking wet, yeah, that will happen. But usually once you get it burned out the first time, get that moisture burned out of there, that blue flame tends to go away, even obviously after, let's say, a rain shower. So the glass. Glass operates a little bit differently with the burners themselves as let's say lava rock would, okay? With a glass application, of course, the gas actually leaves the burner, and it works its way through that glass, and it'll burn on the surface of the glass. Whereas a lava rock, you'll, of course, have large pockets of air underneath the lava rock. You'll get flame underneath there. The glass, of course, you will not find any kind of flame underneath the glass itself. It'll all be on the surface. One problem we see a lot out in the field is guys putting way too much glass on top of the burners as well, okay? It can be really, really critical in an LP application, okay? As many of you know, we use that air mixer orifice on our burners underneath of the pan, all right? And if you get too much glass or hell, even too much lava rock on it at that point, on an LP application, you run the risk of basically back pressure on that air mixer. It won't want to work its way through the glass, and it'll just blow out your air mixer underneath there. Problem with that is, of course, at that point, you're just filling your enclosure up with LP, which I think we all know is a bad situation. So when it comes to glass, no more than a quarter inch to a half inch above the ports of the burner themselves, okay? I do understand you're going to be much thicker in certain areas of the pan, of course, but again, keep in mind that burner sits up off of the pan. So again, we don't have any issues with about half inch of glass on top of the burner itself. Used to be back in the day, of course, a lot of guys, glass was much more expensive back then, of course, as well. But in order to save some money, they would use a base layer of lava rock and then put glass on top of that, okay? We don't recommend doing that, and we haven't recommended doing that in many years. We've done a lot of testing with it. You end up with pockets of gas burning underneath of the media because it's burning in the lava rock, okay? Of course, it's not going to make it to the surface of the glass. That's going to add a whole bunch of heat to the pan that's just going to radiate underneath. And of course, when you got that kind of heat going on, even the best ventilation is really not going to help you much. So it can affect your flame pattern as well. Like I said, you got flame burning in the lava rock. It's not reaching the surface of the glass. So again, it looks like I shouldn't say a weak flame, but again, you get a kind of a transparent flame going on. There's just not a whole lot of flame there. The height might be okay, but there's just not a lot of flame. Service issues become kind of a big deal at that point too. When you go to service a fire pit and find out they've got lava rock and glass in it, well, instead of removing just one media, now you're picking lava rock out of glass, and that can certainly add some time on your service call there. So, Logs, of course, we do offer logs. We have switched to a concrete log here at HPC, okay? Logs can, of course, be placed on top of your lava rock. Probably the number one call we get about the logs is people are very used to using or being around installing log sets indoors, okay? Of course, a log set indoor has a very specific pattern and way to put those logs on the grate. The fire pits do not. You can basically put them in however your customer wants them to look, okay? You can apply them in a TP style. What's nice about that is what we've learned from our penta burners anyway, is they'll actually climb a log. So if you do kind of stack them up a little bit, kind of like in a TP style, you do tend to get a little bit taller flame, okay? The only downside of that is, of course, you've got logs that are kind of TP, kind of stacked against each other. So you do lose some of the flame inside of the logs that you may not see. So do not apply too many logs on these things either. Again, like I said, we use concrete logs now, all right? And of course, they will retain a whole lot more heat. If you choose the 16-piece log set, which we do offer, by all means, don't put them all on at once. Have your customer basically put a few in the garage because they will get dirty, and he may want to replace some down the road. So, depending on the size of the actual fire pit itself, I probably would not recommend any more than about 12 or 13 logs on top of that fire pit. No more than that. Obviously, if you're using a smaller fire pit, then by all means, choose the 9-piece log set, okay? And maybe you only use 6 or 7 of those, okay? You can put them on glass, the logs on let's say, our fiberglass. In all honesty, it doesn't look very good, but it's entirely up to you guys, so. Moving on to another question we get a lot here. My pilot goes out, or it lights up and it goes right back out, okay? On our electronic ignition, and again, this will apply to even the older hot wire ignition systems. Sometimes the pilot flame is too small, all right? And it's not reaching the thermocouple and burning on the thermocouple itself, okay? That could be a number of things. It could be low gas pressure, okay? Could be a clogged pilot orifice. Of course, we're outdoors. You got lava rock, you got debris, you got all kinds of stuff flying around out there. And of course, the pilot orifice is a very, very small hole. And it's very easy to get, let's say, a piece of dirt or debris down in that pilot orifice. It can get to the point where you're still getting flame, but again, you've got most of that orifice blocked up, and of course, you're not getting the full pilot strength burning on that thermocouple. So, a dirty thermocouple, we don't see it a whole lot, but that can certainly be an issue, especially on an LP application. Again, if it's covered in carbon or soot, just get a small soft brush and just brush that carbon off of there, and you should be good to go at that point. So, a new install, going back to the whole bleeding the gas line thing, sometimes, especially on new installs, of course, when you go to fire these things up, sometimes it may take quite a few minutes to actually get the pilot to go, okay? And that's just a matter of bleeding the gas line. If you don't bother to bleed the gas line, let's say at the shutoff, then yeah, basically you're just bleeding that gas line up through the pilot valve, which could take a while, okay? On electronic ignition, I would keep an eye on it and let it cycle maybe about 10 times, turn the unit off, and then turn it back on and let it keep cycling. What I'm doing there is just making sure it doesn't go into lockout after 15 attempts on the igniter. So It should light within 15 attempts, of course. Obviously, even bleeding it up through the pilot. But again, it's something you want to kind of keep in mind, just to keep it from going into lockout. So sometimes the thermocouple is not connected properly in the box, in the blowout box. Of course, if you've replaced a thermal couple, make sure it's seated into the valve box properly. Make sure you've got it seated up inside the pilot assembly as well. So the FPPKs, again, can take these can be a little bit frustrating on a new install as far as the initial fire off. They can take a few minutes to get lit, and again, unfortunately, you're just bleeding that gas line up through the pilot. Okay. Some guys don't hold the control knob for the valve in long enough. Usually it takes about a good 20, 30 seconds, unfortunately. But again, make sure you're holding that pilot valve or the safety pilot valve in long enough to make sure that we're getting good contact in the magnet in the valve there. So. Again, a low gas pressure can be an issue if you're getting the pilot lit and you're not burning on that thermocouple. You've got good flame coming out of the pilot hood, but it's not reaching the thermocouple. That's generally, on an initial install anyway, that could be a gas pressure issue. If your gas pressure is really low, you're going to have a very small pilot flame. Okay. Again, a bad, broken, or even damaged thermocouple. One thing to keep an eye on with the FPPKs, they're held in there with like a friction clip into the pilot assembly themselves. Okay. Sometimes during shipment, that'll kind of drop out. It doesn't really go anywhere, but it drops down a bit. Okay, it comes out of that clip and it just drops down. It looks okay, it looks like it's there, but when you fire the pilot up, the flame actually goes over the thermocouple, okay? If that's the case, just reach in there, obviously with the pilot off, just reach in there and pull up on the thermocouple and make sure it's seated in that pilot assembly properly, okay? Again, a clogged pilot orifice, dirt, debris, that can certainly give you a small or even no pilot at all. So the dirty thermocouple, again, clean it with a soft brush. You should be good to go beyond that. And, of course, make sure it's seated in the pilot assembly and in the valve properly as well. If you're replacing one, make sure it's up in that pilot assembly properly, and make sure, of course, you've got it connected into the valve right. Of course, we still service the older HWI units. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Again, it's pretty much just like our current EIs. The only difference is sometimes those igniters, those hot wire igniters. As many of you know, that was kind of the weak link in our HWI system. But sometimes they'll just be too weak, okay? And that confuses people because they're seeing an igniter glow, but they're not getting pilot. They're even getting gas to the pilot, but it's not lighting, okay? That's just a weak igniter. And that was one of the symptoms we've seen a lot with the HWIs. It would glow, but it just wasn't reaching temperature to actually ignite the fuel, okay? They become very, very brittle as well. You can damage one of those hot wire igniters pretty easily. So, again, pilot does not light again. Just like the HWIs and the FPPKs, you could easily have a plugged pilot orifice. You could have low gas pressure. The pilot valve may not be opening. A lot of guys, they'll see the igniter glow on the older HWIs and they'll go, well, it's not lighting, so they'll put a lighter down there and it's still not lighting, all right? Of course, that's a little bit deeper issue, but again, you can check to make sure you're at least getting 24 volts out of the control module to the pilot valve itself, okay? Again, normally, most of the time, it's water damage when you see that. When you can't get the pilot valve to open, especially on some older units, that's generally some water inside of the valve, which of course it's corroded that plunger in it and it just won't move. So, again, it's this is basically our high-low and our EI units. Again, the clogged pilot orifice. Check wiring to the valve just to make sure we are getting the valve to open. Make sure we're getting gas to the pilot itself, okay? Even if that takes putting a liner down there, just make sure we're getting gas to the pilot, okay? Too high gas pressure. Kind of skipped over that one, but that'll certainly keep that Honeywell valve from opening, all right? We've seen a lot of valves out there that have come back damaged from too high pressure, all right? If it's incredibly high, it's too high for the valve to open. But what happens is eventually it actually tears the diaphragm in the valve and the gas just blows right past the valve. So you're getting gas to it all the time, which is not a safe situation. So, again, the new installs, of course, may take a few cycles to light that pilot and just make sure you're bleeding that gas line real well. The gas conversions. For a very long time here, well, actually, since our very first certification, we haven't really had any field serviceable or field convertible equipment, okay? As far as electronic ignition goes, because of the valve conversion, and because we sealed our box up, CSA didn't really appreciate any kind of, let's say, field conversions out in the field anyway, okay? But some of the things that need to be done to them anyway, of course, the proper orifice for the burner. As you know, we use an LP air mixer on an LP application and just an orifice on the natural gas, okay? The pilot orifice needs to be changed as well. Of course, if you swap those orifices out, you'll get much different height pilot planes, okay? You certainly don't want to mix up the pilot orifices on gas type. The control valve, the Honeywell valve inside the box itself, that needs to be converted to, let's say, LP. All of our units, or all of our valves anyway, Honeywell valves are shipped to us for natural gas application, okay? Of course, each valve comes with an LP conversion kit. And that consists of a spring that needs to be installed into the valve, which will help with the added pressure that you'll see on an LP application. Okay. The biggest concern about our gas conversions as far as getting them done in the field, and trust me, it is something we're working for, but the CSA label itself, okay? As many of you know, obviously, even when we convert our Honeywell valves here to LP, we have to put that LP conversion sticker on the valve, okay? What you're trying to prevent there is obviously any service guy walking up on the equipment. He can easily look at the tag. He knows what he's dealing with. But if you converted that valve, you know, you might have gone to LP and he's thinking he's working with natural gas, which can certainly be a little bit dangerous. So we are not allowed to just send the CSA label with your model and serial number on there. Per our certification, that's something we are not allowed to do, okay? And I think maybe Chad can talk a little bit about what we're working on as far as working towards anyway. Hopefully by maybe this time next year, we'll be shipping everything natural gas with a field conversion, a capable unit out there in the field itself, okay? And it's really only going to consist of making some adjustments on the orifice that's already installed, and the pilot orifice itself, and that's it. We won't be messing around with any valves at all, okay? The current solutions right now, as far as, oh crap, I ordered, let's say the wrong gas type. If the unit's still new and in the box, by all means, give me a call. We'll bring it back here. We'll give you credit, and of course, we'll waive restock fees. And then, of course, you're going to have to order the correct unit that you need there. So, the unit's valve box, that can be removed from the unit. If you've got a unit that's been out there on LP for many years and they finally run natural gas, you can send just the valve box back to us. And, of course, we can convert the valve and we'll ship it back out with the proper pilot and, of course, the proper burner orifice in there as well. There are some charges that apply to that, and on top of that, unfortunately, you've got to deal with the shipping costs as well. So I can't stress enough, guys, try to make sure that you're ordering the right gas type. I know some consumers out there don't know, and they'll tell you one thing, and you show up on the job site, and it's crap. It's not right. Not much you can do about that, but hopefully by next year, we'll have a very easy solution for you. So the FPPKs, a little bit simpler. Again, it's really just the burner orifice and the pilot orifice, okay? Those two orifices would need to be changed. We do use a safety pilot valve on the FPPKs, all right? The good thing about those is they'll handle the added pressure of the LP. There is no conversion that you actually do to a safety pilot valve for natural versus LP. So, and again, getting back to the CSA label, okay? That's one of the really good things about actually sending the unit back here, because when we do that conversion, of course, we're applying the proper label when we ship it back out as well. So, the matchlets, the MLFPKs, that's very simple as well. All that takes is just a burner orifice. That's it. There's really nothing else there to convert. But again, you still run into that label issue. So.
All right, guys, this is Chad again. Chuck mentioned it briefly. Some of you might have been at HPVA, but we were talking about the universal gas orifice. We did win the Vesta Award for this, and that is going to be one orifice that's going to handle either the natural gas or the LP. CSA certified up to 400,000 BTUs. So conversion is very easy on site, no disassembly of the appliance required. All units will ship with NG, so there's no guessing, less SKUs for inventory, and things like that. And for those of you that have not seen it, I'm going to show you a quick video that's going to kind of show the animation. There's no sound to it, so it's just an animation on how easy it is once we launch this. So that was our, it is patent pending technology. Chuck mentioned hopefully this time next year. The goal is to have this certified and ready to be ready to ship either December or January timeframe. So, we're pushing as fast as we can to get this out there. We think it's not just for fire pits, but fireplaces, indoor, outdoor. With the ability to go up to 400,000 BTUs. This is a game-changing technology for us, and we're pretty excited about it.
Of course, the operation of these units as well. We get a lot of questions about, first of all, sequence of operations, but not alone, well, where's my switch or how do I operate the thing, okay? Of course, electronic ignition, there is going to be obviously a sequence of operation. Very first thing you're going to see is obviously the pilot or the igniter in the pilot's going to glow, okay? Secondly, you should hear a faint click, and that should be the pilot valve opening up. That's going to allow gas to the pilot. Once that pilot reaches the igniter, of course, the igniter is going to light the fuel. That pilot flame is going to burn on the thermocouple, okay? Once that thermocouple is warm enough to send the millivolt to the control module, which is a little bit different, once the control module receives that millivolt, says, okay, we got plenty of millivolt here, it's going to send 24 volts to the main valve. Of course, main valve opens, sends gas to the burner, and pilot lights burner. It is an intermittent pilot system, meaning that, of course, the pilot is only going to run when the unit is actually operating. When you shut down, pilot's going to go out as well, okay? I will say this, that, of course, the electronic or the HWI and the EI, they're pretty much the same as far as the operation or the sequence of operation goes, okay? With that said, all you have to do is apply power, okay? Now, how you do that is entirely up to you and your customer. A simple wall switch can be installed in the circuit, okay? We have timers. Those are great for commercial applications, multifamily applications, things like that. We also have the high-low units, which you can operate, of course, with our Bluetooth remote that actually ships with the high-low unit. Or you can download the Smart app as well to your smartphone and obviously operate the fire pit through there. So there's any number of ways to operate these things, guys, especially on 120 volt. All you got to do is open and close the circuit itself. If you are dealing with, let's say, a home automation system, by all means choose the simple on-off. Those can be integrated into an automation system, whereas the high-low units cannot. So try to keep that one in mind. So enclosure ventilation. You know, we deal with this a lot. That tends to be a thing that sticks in a lot of guys' crawls, obviously, of course, because they want to build their big, beautiful structure, and of course, we want to put holes in it, you know, so. But again, it's very critical to the entire system itself, all right? We're already aware of the actual ventilation requirements, but again, we get a lot of questions on where. We have no specification in relation to the elevation of your sidewall there, okay? You can put them high, you can put them low, you can put them in the middle. I generally recommend people go as far down as they can, maybe even at grade level. That tends to keep the ventilation out of your eyesight. And of course, it could help with some drainage in there as well. You know, with those openings down far enough, the thing's not going to fill up with water, okay? Again, we've got to have good, proper drainage in there as well. We certainly want to help that ventilation. Even if you've got it low, you've got it up high, and you don't have ventilation, you could obviously run into some issues of turning it into a swimming pool, of course. So, propane inserts, you know, when you're using propane, it is best to have those vents as low as possible, okay? Because I can assure you eventually that's where all of that LP is going to end up at, is at the very bottom of that enclosure, okay? enclosures with a thick wall should probably use the recommended vent area. And when I say that, we do have a recommended, which would be 4 openings, okay, as opposed to, let's say, just 2. And I say that because of the thickness of the wall on it, all right? And that's going to pertain to heat, okay? Not necessarily gas buildup or anything, but the heat that you could obviously trap inside there. So, of course, you're always going to want to check your vents prior to operation. Just make sure they're not plugged up. Make sure they're free of debris. Make sure you don't have any critters crawled up inside there or anything. You can cover them up. You can get decorative covers. We do offer some vent covers, but there's tons of them on the market as well. You can spend hundreds of dollars all the way down to $10, you know. So, but again, that ventilation is the absolute, probably most critical thing that we see lacking in installs. Okay, and they can cause a lot of damage if that ventilation is done. So. Some of you may know we offer our electronic ignition in a 24 volt and 120 volt, okay? Of course, you're going to want to check with your local codes, of course, but generally, if you're not next to water, like a pool or a pond, or it's not incorporated into some kind of water feature, I would certainly recommend using the 120 volt because it's just a little easier to work with. It's very easy to run another circuit from your electric panel right in the house, okay? If you are in a low voltage application, something to keep in mind about our units, we do have to power these units from a transformer that is a minimum of 100 VA or 100 watt transformer, all right? If you're under that, you're probably not going to get ignition on the fire pit, and you could damage the control module itself, all right? Now, HPC offers our power supplies, okay? We offer them from a very single circuit, 24 volt power supply, all the way up to 5 circuits out of 1 power supply, okay? They are relatively easy to work with because basically you plug them into a 120 volt circuit, and out of that SETCO or that power supply, you'll run your 24 volt circuit out to the fire pit, okay? Again, like I said, we do offer them in multi-circuit, so if you're doing multiple units on the property, you may only need 1 power supply for them, okay? The proper gauge wire, of course, obviously, the farther you run, the larger gauge wire you're going to need to use there. So, again, generally, we see them anywhere from about, we generally see about 12 or 14 gauge wire. 12 will get you up to about 75 feet, I do believe, and that's about as far as you're going to see a fire pit anyway. So, the 24 volt units, you can't exactly add one of our standard remotes to them, okay? Again, our 578-C or our very simple on-off remote, that requires 120 volt. But what you can do with that remote in the power supply is actually put the remote in front of the power supply itself. So that way what you're doing is turning on the power supply at that point, and then you're sending 24 volts to the unit. So our timers, our 694s and 695s, I'm sure some of you are familiar with those. You can use those in a low voltage circuit. Okay, really all that timer is just a switch, okay? What you can't do is run 220 volt through them. But again, 24 or 120 volt, not a problem at all. Our e-stops, the emergency stops we offer, those will work with 24 volt circuits as well. They do not have to be 120 volt. So. Brass burner not lighting here. So, again, the brass burners, I don't know if any of you read the fine print, things like that, okay, but again, they do have a voided warranty. if you don't cover them. Hopefully you guys are familiar with our newly, I think it's maybe been about a year now, we released our hassle-free a lifetime warranty on our burners, okay? Not a whole lot of questions asked, just send me some pictures of it damaged or broken or rotted away and we'll get it replaced. So, of course, the soft brass, that corrodes and oxidizes a whole lot faster than, let's say, the stainless steel does. Clogs, the jets themselves get a little bit frustrating because they do get water down inside of them and get debris down in them as well. The venturis for those jets, they're kind of above the media. You've got to keep those above the media as well. So, again, you end up with exposed ports or exposed jets from that brass burner. The torch style flame, whereas it's kind of neat at first, but it wears a little thin on you. It's kind of more of a pyrotechnic thing than let's say, a true campfire, right? I don't know if any of you guys have seen any of our testing that we've done here at the shop with them. But again, you get water in those things, and they're not, even a basic, simple matchlet is just not going to light. So, and eventually you will start hearing that gurgling and, of course, some whistling with the water, that gas trying to get through the water, of course. So.
I think, this slide in particular, not focusing on what's on it, but more of, I think it's a testament of Chuck and his team and what HPC prides itself on. We're taking calls even on stuff that's not ours. And our team and Chuck and his team, we're going to help you whether it's ours or not. We're here to solve your problems. Obviously most of the calls that we take are going to be, for HPC stuff, but the fact of the matter is, whether it's ours or not, we are taking the calls and we are going to help that customer. And, we pride ourselves on that. We will continue to do that. Hopefully, something needs replaced or changed, they'll use HPC, but we are going to do whatever it takes to get you up and running. So that is, one thing that I do want to point out here for that. The last thing I'll kind of talk about, most of you have seen it. I think we got about 2 weeks left on a special promotion that we're running. Now's the time to upgrade to a Penta system, whether it be matchlit, push button, or electronic ignition. Get 50% off any of those systems. Call the tech department, get an RMA for any brass burner that wants to get replaced, and replace it with the patented Penta technology. We have the raised hub to shed the water, the weep hole design for the drainage, the true campfire flame, silent burning process. Again, whether you're burning it high or you're burning it low, you're going to get that full campfire effect there. This is a remarketing of the best burner out on the market right now, and we want to. It's part of our core technology that I mentioned at the beginning. We're going to continue to improve on it and do whatever it takes. That's the end of the kind of the top 10 things that we kind of see. Some of you are subscribed to our newsletters. By doing that, you get our videos that we kind of do once or twice a week. We decided to do the webinar this week. We know, a lot of people are still around with COVID and everything like that. Hopefully things start to open up. And showrooms and retail stores open back up, and you guys can get back to normal. We're here to support you any way that we can, whether it's products, questions, webinars, training. We have continuing education credit, PowerPoints that we can do. So, we're here to support you any way that we can. I know there's a lot of people on this call, so rather than open it up to questions,